Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 251. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, January the 22nd, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. There was no podcast last weekend. I guess you figured that out. I will tell you that I had a full intention of doing a podcast, but we had other things going on. The trophy wife and I spent the weekend at number one son's house while he and his wife were on holiday, and we were watching 4 grandchildren. So, in theory, I was going to find a time where I could separate myself from the commotion of the grandchildren and do a podcast. That never happened. Maybe I'll get up earlier before they get up and do the podcast. On Saturday morning, they got up at 5:30. So I wasn't getting up earlier than that. So I will tell you that for the most part, the podcast was written for last week. It was not published or even done last week. So what you're getting this week is most of last week's podcast, at least writing it for last week. But I don't think the information is dated at all. It's almost a part 2 of podcast 250, and it has to do with racism, diversity, and fairness in air quotes, in our society. But first, before we get into that podcast, I do want to give you an update on the Jaguar. Well, first of all, before we do that, let's go back to the grandchildren thing. We had a great time caring for the grandchildren. I will tell you, though, there's a reason why young people have children and old people do not, because old people were not meant to raise children. Old people were meant to bounce children on their knee, play with them for 10, 15, 20 minutes, feed them candy, and then go home. Okay, that's what grandparents do. Doing all the other dirty work, not so much. We did it. The house wasn't burned down. The children didn't freak out much. But I will tell you, by the end of the weekend, we were done. The wife and I were done. We were exhausted, and so much so that neither of us really recovered during the week, because as soon as we were done with caring for the children, we had to go back into the workaday world, and her and I both were exhausted on Friday night. And I told my wife, I said, "Look, I'm just totally worn out." And she said, "I am too." I said, "Well, normally you're tired on a Friday night always, and so am I." And then she mentioned, "You know what? But we didn't have a weekend last weekend where we could sit, relax, unwind, and recharge." And she's right. We didn't have that last weekend. So I will tell you that I went to bed early last night, and I slept for a solid 9 hours last night, which I think the batteries are just about recharged now. So after I'm finished with this podcast, after I publish the podcast, I'm going to start working on the Jaguar this morning, and that we will segue now into the Jaguar update. From here, I'm going to pick up the gas tanks, the radiator, and the heater core. Those were gone through by a professional. When you have 70-year-old components in a car, you have 70 years worth of sludge in a gas tank. You have 70 years worth of corrosion in a radiator. You don't spend the type of money that I'm spending on having this engine rebuilt, only to put a substandard cooling element into your car and have it overheat, blow up, and start all over again. So I had, it's hard to find people nowadays that do rebuild radiators, because that stuff isn't done so much anymore. But I found a local guy recommended by the guy who's actually doing the body work on the Jaguar, and he will have my heater core redone, my radiator redone, one of the two gas tanks redone. The other one was too far gone, but so I'm going to do that today. Pick that up, get it to the shop. I've been working on the brakes, but I've ran into problems on the brakes. I can't get them apart. 70 years of, or 55 years of sitting have caused these things to stick and corrode, so that I'm breaking them as I'm getting them apart. So I decided to take a hiatus on the brake work and get into electrical work, because both of them have to be done before the car goes back together, which may be as soon as the end of next month, probably early March, however, before I can start putting that thing back together. I'm finding out with this car that this old car, restoring this old car, is really just like any exercise in anything you do in the day-to-day routine of life. It's simple, but not easy. There is nothing that's difficult about the way this car operates. However, putting it back to the way it was is not easy at all. It's not rocket science, but it is a very, very, very labor-intensive ordeal. Before I get into my my main essay, I got an email, not an email, but an instant message, actually, yesterday afternoon. Didn't get a chance to read it until this morning, early this morning when I got up. And it came from a listener. And he actually sent me a video, a 15-minute video on a panel of doctors talking about vaccines. I thought, oh, do I really want to take 15 minutes of my life and see this dopey video? Maybe. Let me do it. So I looked at it, and it was better than most. And it was actually a panel of doctors talking about the vaccine and how good was it and how bad was it, and is this something that we should be for or we should be against. And I will tell you that it was a fair representation of what's out there. Some of the doctors, I think, I respected their opinion. Some of them, I think, were out of left field with their opinions, because they were just that. And something that you have to remember about when a doctor says anything, or when a lawyer says anything, or when a politician says anything, or a religious figure says anything, or a nuclear physicist says anything. These people are speaking from a level of authority, but that level of authority only goes so far. What I'm trying to say is, if you're a medical doctor, what that means is you know more about medicine than me. If you're a lawyer, you know more about the law than me. But that doesn't mean you're smarter than me. That doesn't mean that your opinion outweighs mine. And most important, when you start to deviate from your level of expertise, your opinion at best is on the same plane as mine. At worst, I trump you. And the reason I say that is, and in my response to the gentleman who sent me, the listener who sent me the video, he likes to rebuild tractors, okay? And I mentioned, I said, look, there's no doubt in my mind that these doctors are more educated than you and I. But I bet not one of them knows how to rebuild a tractor. So if that doctor starts telling me, or the dear listener, how to rebuild a tractor, I'm not going to listen to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. When a doctor starts spouting out numbers that are just BS, I'm done listening to him. One of these doctors said, why, with the vaccine, you know, that 20,000, over 20,000 people have died from taking the vaccine. And that's probably less than 1% of all people that have died. Okay, where did you get those numbers? Did you just make them up? You're a doctor, so I think you know how to do math. If 1% of the people that have died from the vaccine is 20,000, then how many people do you think died of the vaccine? If you say it's less than 1%, that means over 2 million people have been killed by the vaccine. That, my friend, is baloney. It's BS. It's just a lie. 2 million people have not died from getting the vaccine. They haven't. They just haven't. And if you start running numbers like that, you've lost me. Because I will never listen to a thing that you say, because you obviously either misspoke, and if you're going to misspeak like that, you don't need to be on a platform at all saying anything, because you don't understand the English language if you're misspeaking like that. If you knew what you were saying, friend, you don't know how to do math. So if you either can't, if you haven't mastered the English language and or don't know how to do math, excuse yourself from the conversation if you would, okay? And the whole thing with conspiracy theories, those of you who have listened to me for the 20 some odd years I've been doing this on terrestrial radio or podcasting know that I guess you would say I'm a converted conspiracy theory fan. I used to be big into this kind of stuff until I started investigating it. And when I came to the reality that nobody in this world knows how to keep a secret, nobody keeps a secret. They all run their pie hole as soon as they can. All of them. Well, maybe not all. 95, 97, 98% of all people cannot keep a secret, and they're going to tell at least one person the dirty little secret. And that one person will tell one or two, and those one or two will tell two or three, and those two or three will tell three or four, and before you know it, it's not a secret anymore. That's just how things work. They've always worked that way. The difference is today, you and I have as big an opportunity to throw stuff out there as the main news reporters from yesteryear. Okay? So nobody can keep a secret. Everybody runs their pie hole and everybody listens to it. So the whole conspiracy theory thing goes down the tube, because if you can't keep a secret, nothing is secret. Okay? Also, I made a personal pilgrimage to Dealey Plaza where JFK was shot. And when I looked at the grassy knoll, when I looked at the window of the bookstore where Oswald allegedly shot the president, I'm thinking, okay, this guy was a decorated Marine Corps marksman. I'm looking at the window. I'm looking at the X on the street where he was shot. Friends, this ain't a tough shot. Now, the whole magic bullet thing, okay, I can't explain that. I can't explain that at all. Those two things converted me from being a conspiracy theory fan to more of an open-minded person, okay? There is no deep state. There is no trilateral commission. In fact, there is a trilateral commission. I take it back. But they publish the minutes to their meetings. How do I know? Go online and Google it and read them yourself. I've done it. I've read the meetings of the Trilateral Commission. So if you hold meetings and then publish the minutes to the meeting, you're not a secret organization anymore. The Bilderbergers, yeah, they're dopey people, but they're just a think tank. They don't have any real power. I mean, they have power because they're the captains of industry, but if you don't buy their stuff, they have no power. You don't have to buy their stuff. So that said, there were a lot of good questions in this interview. But remember, doctors are more educated than you and I, but they're not smarter than you and I. Okay, so I mean, if you and these guys were saying, look, there's stuff in these vaccines that are questionable. Yep, I'm sure there are. That doesn't surprise me. It shouldn't surprise anybody. Until very recently, very, very recently, mercury used to be in most every vaccine, and they put it there on purpose. Why? Well, it wasn't to dumb down society so that the Trilateral Commission could rule us all. It wasn't for that reason. Mercury acted as a vehicle to help distribute the vaccine throughout the system, and it worked. However, they also realized, hey, this is a good vehicle. It helps the vaccine work, but we probably don't want to put mercury into children. So they found another vehicle. They don't put mercury in vaccines anymore. Open your mouth if you have cavities. Those silver things in your mouth, They're silver, but they're also full of mercury. They put mercury in your mouth. Okay, is